You are listening to the Intelligent Racer Podcast, where we look to educate and entertain the endurance racing community through discussions with racing professionals and elite age groupers.
In today's episode, I speak with professional triathlete Ben Kanute. Ben recently finished second place at the 70.3 World Championships. We talk about that race and other triathlon topics. I hope you enjoy. Ben, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
So I was reading about your background, and I read that you started swimming at age 7 and started triathlons at age 8, which is pretty incredible. I wish I started that young for both of those things. Can you just talk about how you got introduced to these sports?
Yeah, for sure. It probably all started back when I was watching my dad do triathlons when I was really young. He was doing them in the late 90s, and I watched him do the Chicago Triathlon, which I think was Mrs. T's at the time, and thought it was just a really awesome sport. Grew up kind of watching the Ironman World Champs on TV, and then there's an opportunity to do a kids triathlon pretty much just down the street from my house at a local health and wellness center when I was about 8 or 9, and jumped at the opportunity. And a couple years after that, there was a local kids triathlon team that started up that ended up being fairly high performance minded. And that's kind of what got me into a lot of youth racing and into the USAT system.
Right. And obviously swimming being one of those things that when you start young, you can really notice the difference later on in life. I started much later, and it's been really tricky to learn it. Out of the 3 disciplines, did one come easier than the other, or kind of since you started all 3 young that they progressed evenly?
I'd say the swim and bike, I guess, came a little bit more naturally overall, but I almost feel like that's because I just spent the most time on those. Running was mostly just done during kind of triathlon season, and I didn't necessarily spend as much focus on it at a really young age as I did maybe the swim and the bike. But yeah, those 2 were the first 2 to kind of show as my strengths, and the run has been a little bit slower to come along.
And, you know, obviously for a kid, you're going to probably let them do whatever they enjoy and, you know, see where things go. But if you were to say an ideal situation, do you think starting off triathlon early is the best approach from your perspective, or would you say specializing in one of the 3?
You want to get a good feel for all the different sports and opportunities available to you as a kid. And I was really lucky to have parents who let me swim, bike, run, do triathlon, do soccer, baseball, tennis, whatever, computer classes at local areas, and just kind of really spread out and be able to make sure that I was trying out different things to really see what I enjoyed. And from there on, as I got older and older, I was basically asked the question, like, what's most important to you now? And I had to let soccer go and baseball go as I got older because I just didn't want to devote as much time. And maybe I naturally gravitated towards some of the things that I was better at, but I also did that because of the team that I was on. I enjoyed what I was doing. And I think to be successful at something, you have to, first off, enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the environment that you're in. And then kind of continue to devote more and more time into it as you get older.
Why don't we talk a little bit about some of your recent races that you've had? And I just wanted to touch on really quickly that you were in the Rio Olympics last year.
It was literally a dream come true. I mean, it's hard to put some of the accomplishments and feelings throughout my career into words. And I think Rio is one of those moments that's hard to do because it's something that is, I don't know, kind of dangled like up at the very top of the ladder throughout your entire career. And I always love representing my country and wearing the stars and stripes in international competitions. And the Olympics is one of those special competitions that's it only comes around once every 4 years, and it's just one of the most special ones. So to be a part of that and to experience it was really, really awesome.
Right. And we'll kind of talk on later on a little bit about your long-term racing goals. But one thing I noticed recently was the Olympics announced that the mixed relays is going to be coming into as a medal event. And I know you've had a lot of success in that area. Do you have your eyes on the next Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of many goals that I have going forward. I really love the mixed team relay, and I think it's an awesome opportunity at the Tokyo 2020 games. So that's one of the things that I'm going to aim for. But yeah, it's definitely one of them that I'm fairly excited about.
Right. And what else is in your set of goals in terms of formats and distances?
This year, I've taken a lot of time to kind of take a step back from the ITU scene and just make sure I experience everything that triathlon has to offer, from super sprint racing all the way up to half Ironman distance. And I balanced a pretty competitive ITU schedule with a few half Ironman, and did some non-draft Olympic racing. And I really kind of like being able to jump from one distance to the next. And I mean, the more I talk about it with different people and all of that, it doesn't necessarily make sense how I can be very competitive at super sprint racing and also at the half Ironman distance. But so far it's been working fairly well, and I like being able to have that different range. So I think going on into 2018, 19, 20 is going to be balancing out the different distances and how they work in my schedule, and just trying to continue to improve myself and win races.
And you're kind of a throwback to some of the earlier, legends of the sport that, I know Mark Allen comes to mind, who kind of competed at all different distances and had success. So, rather than specializing in one distance, it seems like you're kind of going and, mixing it up and kind of being, I would assume, make you a stronger all-around triathlete.
Yeah, and that's kind of the way me and my coach Jim Vance have viewed it, is training my strength and endurance side for the half Ironmans, and then also still revisiting that foot speed and ultra high end stuff for this super sprint. And it's funny, those are the two that I really had success at this year, and we kind of figured it would meet more in between at some sprint and Olympic distance racing. But yeah, I think we had some good confirmations with some of the stuff that we've been working on this year.
Right. And so speaking of half Ironman, I mean, you recently were at the World Championships, and I had an absolutely incredible day. I was watching it, and you just absolutely crushed it. So, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, how did that day go for you? Starting off, did you go into it with a lot of confidence? You went into the swim. You obviously came out of the water and led on the bike and had one of your best half marathons ever. So just talk through sort of that day for me and your mental state at the beginning and going through the day.
Just right off the bat, I think it was just about a perfect day for me. I went in with a specific plan that me and my coach worked through. And to be honest, we went through a bunch of different scenarios. I knew that I wanted to push the swim and try and get gaps, since it was a slightly upriver swim. And I thought that maybe I'd exit with one to maybe 4 or 5 other guys, but it ended up just being me and Javier Gomez with about a 40-second gap or so. And then coming in to transition, I wanted to push the bike kind of right away and get people, a little bit nervous, maybe try and tire them out before kind of attacking the 3 mile or so hill up to the top of Lookout Mountain. And then at the top, I was going to take a look around, and if I was alone, I'd just push on and try and hold my half Ironman watts that I wanted to for the rest of the ride. And if there were other people with me, I would kind of look around and make some more decisions and see, is this person pushing too hard, not enough? Is it too big of a group to try and get away? And kind of keep at the various checkpoints, kind of just keep evaluating and trying to race the best that I could and follow my plan. And then the run was just about executing and trying to run a pace that I was capable of. And from training, me and my coach thought 114 to 116 on that course was going to be just about right. So I was making sure I wasn't going out too hard and just running my pace, and didn't really expect to have 4 minutes coming off the bike. But I knew there were a lot of really, really fast runners in that group behind me, and didn't want to take any chances with going out too fast and blowing up, trying to hold them off. So I just really tried to run my pace and just check off the stuff that we talked about, and it ended up being good enough for second place.
Yeah, and it sounds like, on the bike, even though you had that 4-minute lead, it sounds like you stayed within yourself and, obviously stayed within the wattage you wanted to and just stayed disciplined. You didn't get overly excited or push it too hard?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the very beginning of the race, I was probably a little bit higher, and that I might have felt that a little bit towards the end of the bike, but I think that really it all kind of went to plan. I capped myself at a couple places and rode toward that, and it was really just about being steady. And I think I practiced for that sort of thing, practiced my strength, and to be able to continue all the way throughout the race at the watts that me and my coach talked about. And I was just happy to be able to do that.
Right. And then, obviously to podium and come in second at a world championship is incredible. And, obviously you have a long career ahead of you. So this is just the beginning. And so congratulations on that. But, when Javier Gomez caught up to you and passed you, I mean, how did you stay mentally focused to say, you know what, I still can have a great day and not give up? I know you're a professional. I know it's your job, but at the same time, you're human. So I would imagine there's a little bit of that mental aspect of it. That's, I could imagine a lot of people breaking down after that, but you stayed strong and came in second. Yeah,
I mean, I know Javi fairly well, his racing style and everything from the ITU circuit. And I mean, watching him grow as I was a kid, watching him race. And I knew that 4 minutes was going to be right on the edge of maybe being able to take him down. But I kind of expected, especially I got a few time splits and knew he was taking pretty decent chunks out of me. And I kind of was doing math in my head and figured it'd be like I wanted to get to the halfway point, and then I was just going to take it mile by mile and see how long I could hold him off. And the place that he made the pass was right at about 8 miles. And I mean, that's still 5 miles to go, which is a good chunk of running. And I knew he was going to probably put in a pretty good surge just to make sure the pass, like not take any chances. And for me to probably drop down 20 seconds a mile plus to hold on to it might have been suicide. So I was starting to feel a little bit better than I was on the second loop than the first. So I tried to ramp it up a little bit and just use him a little to maybe limit the damage on what was happening behind me. Cause I knew Tim Don was still charging and didn't know how many people were running with him. So I just, I kind of let the pass happen and just made sure to keep running my race as well, since there was still quite a bit of racing.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was the small chance that maybe he would blow up or something, I tried to keep myself somewhat close. But, passing and racing happens. And I think in a half too, it's important to stick to your game plan a little bit, because it is a pretty long race.
Right. And, obviously it was a near perfect day for you. I mean, is there anything you would have done differently, either, in the run up to it, the taper, or during the race, anything? Or was it sort of went as planned and take it as a great day and as a, kind of momentum into the rest of this year and next?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would change much. There hasn't really been very many races this year, maybe one or two where I look back and go, well, if this would have gone better, I would have significantly improved my placing. I feel like this year has been a really good year for me executing my race plan and trying to make the most of the situation. So, it would have been awesome to run a couple minutes faster and maybe made it to the finish chute one place higher. But I think that taking into account the swim and the bike, the run was right where it needed to be. And I don't think I could change much. There's some nitpicky things maybe that could happen, but that's just a lot of that is just me growing as an athlete as well.
I mean, what does your training look like? I mean, are you primarily, do you do a lot of indoor work, outdoor work? I mean, what is it sort of that you and your coach design, and how do you approach this?
Yeah, so this year we did something it calls conjugate sequencing, where we we did about a week or so of strength-based work, and then a week or so of high-intensity work, and then a bit of rest before starting the cycle over. So I think I responded well to that. Like, I've had a pretty solid improvement in some of my super sprint racing and hanging with some better runners, and then as well as having some really good workouts at the high end of my swim and bike. And then we did a lot of like strength and TT work on the time trial bike, just getting used to the position and building up that strength and endurance that was needed for the half racing. And definitely had some success with some longer, steadier runs. And I think that I maybe thought that it would meet a little bit more in between at the 5 and 10K. But I mean, looking back on it now, we were definitely training for long stuff and short stuff. And some of that middle stuff did kind of get helped, but it wasn't a whole lot of specific work on 5 or 10K or 40K or anything like that. It was kind of just bleeding over from like the two extremes that we worked on.
Right. And so, you've been as you said, you've been doing this sport since you were 8, and obviously now a professional, and professional training is way different than, well, an 8-year-old training, but an amateur's training as well. And, just talk about a little bit of how it evolved over time. I mean, as you got older and, into your teens and 20, obviously you're in your 20s now, but, how did it evolve? And, from an amateur's perspective, I mean, what would your kind of recommendation would be for an approach to training?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just been kind of to make sure I'm listening to my coaches and work with them and making sure that I evolve as a person and an athlete. So, I mean, for me, I got my elite license when I was in my just after my freshman year of college, and I think I learned a lot while trying to train, going to school and stuff. I had to in high school work around like a pretty busy schedule, and I did high school cross country and swimming. And then I moved on to college where I had maybe a little bit more time, but still had quite a bit of requirements and extracurriculars doing school and working on that sort of thing. And then I moved into being a professional post-college and just having time to train. And for me, it was just, I think the biggest key has been time management, and whether I have all day to kind of spread out my workouts and only focus on that, or I have like a bunch of other stuff going on. I learned that like working hard is really important, but it's also important to work smart and make sure that if you only have an hour that day, maybe you have to focus for that 1 hour and put your effort into that. So I think that to use a cliche, is there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and it's just like nutrition. Like my type of training might not necessarily work for another person, but it's finding that balance that kind of is able to get you out the door and still really enjoy it, as well as getting the most out of each day.
Right. And you mentioned the importance of the coach. So you said you trained with Jim Vance. And so, why does he work for you? I mean, what is that coaching relationship like? And, obviously there's many coaches out there, but this relationship's working. So,
yeah, I actually just moved on to Jim Vance from my last coach just this past October, because it ended up just being a good time for a change for me, kind of less risk. I mean, a coach for me, I need somebody who's going to kind of tell me what to do. And I don't, the reason why I wouldn't coach myself is because I would either make it way too hard or way too easy. So Jim is able to kind of monitor everything, look at the data, and tell me, hey, yeah, you can handle all of this and still consider my feedback. But he kind of makes me push myself and make sure that I don't kind of get out of control. And I'm able to go and train with him in San Diego or be in Arizona and be remote a bit. And just somebody who I can communicate easily with and be able to make sure that we're both on the same page and kind of working together to and trusting each other to get to each race the most prepared as possible.
Right. And that's such a good point in terms of, the coach will tell you what to do, but more importantly, they'll tell you what not to do in terms of, human nature to overtrain or whatnot. But I mean, what else do you do from a recovery perspective? Anything that, works for you to keep you healthy and injury free?
Yeah, I mean, recovery is big, and I'm a big fan of prehab and making sure that I'm rolling and stretching and seeing a physical therapist and a massage therapist to make sure that I'm preventing any injuries that could come along, making sure that I'm taking care of any bad sorenesses right away. And then it's like professional athletes are really good at focusing at certain things. Like, we're really good at working hard, but we're also really good at not working at all and just sitting around and being lazy. And I think in triathlon, there's a lot of type A personalities where we just want to go hard all the time and not really take the easy days easy, or not take a day off or something like that. And to me, the rest is just as important as working hard.
And so I wanted to touch a little bit on you do some of these more interesting formatted races in terms of, you just did Super League, and you I believe you're doing Island House this year. Can you just talk a little bit about, from I guess a spectator's point of view? I feel like these formats are both fun for the athlete, but also for the spectator. And, you definitely take part in them. And as you said, you excel in super sprints and things like that. But maybe just talk about these formats and what it appeals to you, and I think why they're great for the sport.
I loved Super League, just competed in that for the first time, and going to get to experience Island House for the first time coming up here in about a month or so. And I mean, I think it's great. Like, it's fun to try and go back to a race every year, go to an Ironman or something where the course is measured perfectly and you're going out and trying to get best times and stuff. But to me, that's not necessarily what triathlon is all about. We're not a track and field or a swimming sport where the pool and track are measured down to basically the millimeter to confirm or deny records. And we have varying weather conditions and stuff. So I think these unique formats provide just a kind of like a pure racing format where it doesn't really matter what times you're going necessarily. Like, we could be doing a 2K run or a 5K run or whatever, and still be just going all out. And sometimes there are tactics going on, but one of the things that I love about the shorter super sprint distance racing is it tends to just be all out hard racing, and there's no hiding in that. And I think that some of these formats, it shows kind of the complete triathlete. They tend to stand out in these formats, and it's not so much, there's just no place to hide, I guess.
Yeah, and they look incredibly painful and challenging. I can't imagine. Yeah,
no, they are for sure, but that's kind of the lure of them.
Exactly. And it's also, like I said before, it makes for a very good spectator sport. And I really hope it helps grow, at least in the US, getting more stuff on TV. I crave to watch races, and there just isn't enough here. And I'm hoping some of these unique formats will get onto some of our television channels.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what some of them are striving for, is to just be more spectator friendly. Super League was a great experience. There was just tons of people lining every inch of the course, whether it was sunny or rainy out, and they do an incredible job at broadcasting it. So, I'm hoping for that as well.
Yeah. And so I guess one final set of questions would be around kind of, what's next? So, do you have anything else lined up? We obviously talked about Island House, but for the rest of this year, and, have you started to think about, I know it's early, but what 2018 is going to look like in terms of what are your kind of focuses, and, how is the season going to kind of be planned out?
Yeah, I'm still trying to make it through this season, to be honest. I've got the Sarasota World Cup, which is also U.S. Nationals, coming up in just over a week, and then Island House to finish off the year. And I'm kind of waiting to make sure everybody releases their race schedule for next year, because like I mentioned before, trying to balance everything from super sprints up to the half Ironman races is going to take some careful planning, and I want to make sure that I have every race possible that could suit me kind of like laid out, and then kind of start to look at what makes the most sense as I move throughout the year. So there's going to be a section of the off season kind of blocked off, trying to figure out what the best way to do it is. But I mean, I think the main goal is to just see myself improving as a triathlete, and making sure my swim, bike, and especially my run is getting faster and faster. And I mean, I think the goal of most people is I'd like to win races too, and I'd like to continue to check some big ones off the list and revisit some of them, like Alcatraz and some half Ironman and some of these non-draft races, as well as pick up some World Cup wins and stuff like that.
Right. And do you envision at any point in your career, as you kind of mature and as an athlete and get older, to get up to the Ironman distance? Or
once you move on to the half Ironman, move on from the half Ironman to the Ironman, you kind of say that that's going to be your main focus in the long distance racing. And I'm in no real rush to get there. I think that some of probably my best races of my career may end up being at that longer distance, but I'm a pretty big believer in trying to get as much speed as you can before moving on to the super long stuff. And it's probably quite a bit down the road for me, as I'd still like to kind of check off some of these shorter distance stuff, but I'd say it's definitely not out of the cards.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time today. Best of luck with your last few races of the season, and definitely be following you into 2018. But again, congratulations on the huge result at the World Championships a few weeks back.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Intelligent Racer Podcast. For more information on this and other episodes, please visit www.intelligentracer.com. Also, be sure to check us out on social media, and please review us on your podcast directory. Join us next time for another edition of the Intelligent Racer.